I find it very frustrating that there's no right-wing party in India in terms of economic ideology.
Absolutely.
There used to be a Swatantra party, if you remember,
yes.
Which is right-wing in ideology and believed in free markets. This country doesn't really believe in free markets yet, does it?
No, in terms of, I think there's no party as to like articulate that. And I think that this policy, no one's come up with a cogent policy how to articulate that. And the only time we have carried out major reforms is when we have been in some sort of a crisis mode. So I think that that's just who we are. That's what I told you at the outset too, which is that, therefore, I never expected India to grow at 9-10%. In fact, when I wrote my first book, as you may recall, back in 2012, at that point in time, there was a lot of hype about BRICS, about India. And I sort of, tried to puncture that a bit by saying these BRICS are broken, it's all overhyped. And even for India, on which I was relatively more optimistic compared to the Brazils and Russias in that book, at that point in time, I had said that it's impossible for India to grow at 9-10%. And then 8% was considered the floor. We all thought 8% was the God-given right. Now we have moved that down to 6%.
Right.
So in terms of, even though it's been a great decade for India in many ways, particularly from a stock market ways, let's not lose the fact that at a pretty low per capita income, we're still growing at about 6% or so, whereas these other miracle economies grew at 9, 10, like 11, 12%.
Yeah. Ruchir, let me, every bull market tells a story, right? The Japanese bull market presaged the rise of Japan.
Yes.
The US tech bull market presaged the rise of tech in our economy. This is the last man standing, as you've said, the Indian bull market. What is driving it? What is the story behind it?
Yeah, so I think there's no doubt that the fact that the economy is on the right trajectory is something which underpins it. Because, one thing which people ask me that are we in a bubble or not? And I say that, yeah, the market may be expensive, but a true bubble is when the market's going up and your earnings are going down. Which is what happens, by the way, at the end of
your
all
earnings
big
going
bubbles.
down.
Yes, like even the tech, NASDAQ and all that, the earnings growth began to really slow down. And I'm concerned in the US today, if you look at the top leading tech stocks, we're beginning to see that earnings growth slow down. In India's case, generally the earnings have done pretty well. And it's been a very broad-based economic rise of at least the stock market in terms of the various sectors have done well in India. So that way it seems grounded in the reality that the economy is moving in the right trajectory. But of course, it's been amplified by the fact that you've had this trend of financialization, which is that people in India hardly owned any equities, and now they've become used to pouring money into equities at every dip, every month. So that financialization that's happened is what has led to India now trading at a big premium to other emerging markets. So this combination of the economy being in the right trajectory, the fact that earnings growth has held up, and now it's been fueled increasingly by the steady flow of domestic money is what I think has really helped the Indian market.
All bull markets end, right? Is there something called a permanent bull market?
Of course not. And even in India's case, we have seen, I mean, you have watched these markets and stuff. You have gone through patterns of ups and downs, which are there. And that's my fear, that a lot of the current generation has not really seen what a downturn can look like. But we have lived through those periods. I mean, there was a whole period which we lived through from right up from 1994 till 2002. You'll remember when the Sensex would keep trading between 3,000 and 4,000. It was just such a frustrating time. But even then, there was some really, as what they call a unique term in India. There were a lot of multi-baggers even in that.
Infosys was at that time.
Yes, HDFC Bank, Infosys. You had some, some companies came out. So that's the great thing about India. I feel that there's no emerging market out there with a diversity of stocks that India has got and the diversity of sectors that India has.
So the bull market is alive, but just to bring the historian back into you, I remember in America, in the 70s bear market after the Nifty 50 bubble, the taxi medallion sold for more than the price of a Wall Street seat on the Wall Street. I think it was $25,000 for a taxi medallion out there. That's how markets bottom out. So what would you fear would be the red flags that would end this rally? I understand things are fine, earnings are improving, money is flowing in. What would be the red flags that you would be looking for?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things out there. One, I think that if earnings growth really begins to slow down, right, in terms of the overall stuff, and the market keeps sort of hanging up there, I think that that sort of means that the momentum is ending. Earnings growth, really begin to slow down. Second is if by any chance inflation comes back, because if the central bank is forced to sort of tighten money in this environment, I think that will be a big negative for the market. Currently, we're not seeing much signs because, in fact, inflation still seems relatively well behaved. And we're not seeing any great signs of a major earnings slowdown. Yeah, for the mid to small caps, I'm seeing some signs, but generally, I think earnings are still doing relatively well. So those are the two red flags that I would currently see. Having said that, I personally feel that other emerging markets today have greater opportunity just because they're trading so cheap in terms of that. You've got markets from Poland to Indonesia, so some of those trading at single-digit PEs and have decent growth profiles. As you well know, in investing, low PEs or low valuations are value traps often.
Of course.
But I'd say that if you have growth as well, so many of these markets are ignored out there. So I'd say the opportunity is there. And so the investor in me would tell people, diversify a bit outside to the extent that you can. But on its own otherwise, the market in terms of, as I said, that I don't see these really big red flags pop up.
I understood.